Hello, hello. This is Tammy Brunk, Earth Sky Woman, and I'm speaking to you today with an astrology oracle for the month of October. And also, I'm going to begin that with an overview of what this very potent harvest full moon in Aries has as medicine for us today and in the coming days. So I'm going to begin today with and that full moon could be seen as a super full moon because the moon is going to be at perigee. It's going to be at its closest to the earth on the 8th, just 2 days from now. And so, something that's special about this full moon is that you're going to see it even more big and beautiful and bright tomorrow, Tuesday, the 7th of October. So, let me go ahead and share that chart so we can kind of use that as an entry point, not only for this full moon, but also for the month to come. Okay, so, all right. So, whew, we have I just want to start by taking a breath with you. Um, I am in New Mexico right now. I took a very last minute, just pretty much a week here in the Southwest, and drove here. I'm going to drive back here tomorrow to Missouri, and it's so interesting because I feel like I used to do this drive all the time. It was no big deal. And now I just think it's the intensity of this moment we're in where everything just feels more amplified. And, part of, I think, what has been happening for many of us is we're actually doing all this great work so that we are in touch with our bodies. But what that means also is that we just can't be as unconscious about the impact of the things we're doing. And that's a good thing. Anyway, but I'm here and I'm really grateful to be here. It's such a beautiful time. I'm in Santa Fe right now, and I got to see the beautiful mountains and the aspen with some dear, dear friends, and it was stunning and spectacular. So I feel very, very lucky to be here in such a gorgeous time of year. Um, Okay, so let's just first begin by I like to do this, honoring the month we have just come out of. And again, just taking a good deep breath because we have crossed through this eclipse portal. And I don't know about you all, but it completely, I mean, it really, rocked my world. It was a very intense one for me. Perhaps it was for many of you as well. I just feel like both of those eclipses really surprised me because they weren't activating anything in my chart personally that intensely, but both of them brought up some big themes that were really, primary themes. And that's probably true for many of us, that whatever some of our biggest life patterns are, those were going to come up. And for many of us, it was a very strong feeling, a lot of grief, a lot of facing old patterns that cause just, it's been coming in waves. So, with that, and then I don't, whoever, all of you beautiful people listening, everyone out there. And I just want to just really thank all of you who are listening. And for the many of you who I've spoken to recently who've said, for example, I listen to you all the time. I don't necessarily comment, but I just want to let you know how important it is. Thank you for that because it does feel a little bit like speaking into the void sometimes. Um, but many that I've spoken with, you know, uh, many, I will just say, I have so many different kinds of people who listen to what I speak about, and people who come from all different perspectives, backgrounds, spiritual traditions, rural, urban. There's just with many different angles of life. And within some of my spiritual community, there's more of an emphasis on what I will refer to as the renunciate path. And certainly, with so much Virgo, the Virgo season to Virgo new moons, Venus in Virgo, there has been a big aspect for many of us to want to kind of go within and really take time to um, separate ourselves from so much of the noise and the challenge and the um, instability. And profound conflict that we see and feel in the world around us. So, many of us have been kind of trying to root into our own practices and our own ways of being with our communities, our families, our neighbors, our global community. We've been wanting to learn to do that in ways that are really first rooted in our own good, regulated nervous system when that's possible. So but we can, be really good with our practices, or we can really simplify our lives. And even, those of us, for example, I don't have kids, but I do have a lot of children in my life. I have a lot of family members and community that I'm close with. So I feel, even though my life is more simple and I live in many ways like a renunciate, I feel the reverberations of what's happening in the larger world. We all do, even if we are, really in our own bubble, we're all connected. So we're feeling it. Even if we interpret it differently, we're feeling the just being rocked, by what's going on in our planet and the astrology right now. We've known this fall was going to be intense, and it has played out that way, certainly. So, but we've moved, we move into the season of Libra. The sign of Libra, the sun's been in Libra since the fall equinox. And so a lot of the themes and a lot of what is awake inside of us gets stirred is the desire to tend to our closest relationships, to our bonds. And so, it can be, and that is a lot of what I've been working through as well, which is just this question of how do I really honor myself and learn to be in relationships and care for and nourish the bonds and the relationships I have, without getting kind of taken under sometimes by even just that experience of the tangling of so many other people's energies. So I have practices. I think most of us have practices where we clear our energy field, which I do think is wise. Um, and the reality is that we are quantum entangled, we are connected. And so, even if we are really practicing good spiritual hygiene and mental hygiene, which is almost more important right now, we're connected. We're going to be impacted. But in this Libra season, one of the challenges, is that we can go into zones of people pleasing, codependency. And one of the ways I try to measure this is just to when I root in, at the beginning of the day or at any point, I might just really ask myself, well, actually, you know what, I'm going to share a practice. And I've shared this before, I think, but one of the practices I do, I was actually shown by a spider. I had a personal initiation where I was bit by a spider in my ear. And in the aftermath of that, spider, when I was really connecting with the medicine of her, she was sharing with me, offering to me what her gifts are, and in part why she came to me. And the practice and the gift that she gave me that's very useful for Libra season, is one where, okay, I'll just share. She basically was showing me how, as a spider, when she weaves her web, and I have shared this before, but I think I can share it again. When she weaves her web, she's at the center of her own web, right? That's number one. Rule number one, spider medicine that can support us in Libra season is stay at the center of your own web. What is yours to tend to? What is your domain, your realm of influence? What is your personal web? And it's also your energy field, right? Literally, the energy field around your body, is I see that is my first responsibility. That is what I'm responsible for, accountable to, is to maintain that in a healthy way to the best of my ability. So Spider showed me that, and she gave me a practice, which is that I'm going to invite you to do this with me right now. Actually, interestingly, I wasn't planning to do this, but okay. So you breathe, with any practice like this, you breathe, and the intent is to really drop into your body, into present awareness. And then you might close your eyes just so that you can turn within and you can really see with the inner eye. And so then you would kind of almost envision yourself, see yourself as being, having a web around you, like a spider's web. And it's just filaments of light, threads of light all around you, forming this beautiful web. And you can see that as your energy field. And so with your eyes closed, as you tune in, you're seeing this web of light. And then you might see this may come to you as a felt sense. It might come to you as an image. It might come to you as words, however it does. But you then will ask. So I'll say, okay, is there anyone in my energy field right now? Is there anyone in my web? And then quickly you'll see, so just ask that question. You might see, okay, yeah, I've got for example, you may have your 2-year-old who's right up right here, right next to your belly, right? Your 2-year-old's right there. Now, for very young children, my sense is that sometimes it's natural to have them close. But even so, I often say to people, experiment with this idea that your energy field is just yours. It's just for you. It's just for you and divine. And so even the 2-year-old, you could literally ask Mother Mary or a beloved spirit guardian to move this beautiful child so that they're a little ways out of your energy field. And then what happens with that is that you can still have literally this child in your arms. You could be nursing the child, but there isn't this so much of a fusing of your energies that it's a kind of a merging that can cause confusion between the two of you, because it is important, so long as we are in a human body, to have, I'm me, you're you. We have autonomy, even as we're very connected. True intimacy requires autonomy, even for the little ones. And but you would ask, so, and I'm asking right now, is there anyone in my energy field? Yes, I feel one person in my energy field. That's not terribly surprising. Perceive of where they are, how are they connected in some way? And then you can ask a guardian, a guide. Like, so for example, if my mom's in my energy field, I might think about who is a guide. It would be Jesus, who she really works with. So I might ask Jesus to come and literally just escort her with love outside of my energy field. With the idea being that at the beginning of the day, what I really want is I want to feel me. I want to be connected to myself. I want to be in my own energy. And for those of us who do tend towards being empaths and sensitives, this is vital. We're not going to be very productive in the world. We're not going to be effective if we are not really plugged into our own energy, right? And I had a wonderful mentor at one point who said to me that because I had been in a relationship where there was far too much, was an experience of extraction, of me giving energy indiscriminately because this person had profound need. And it had been very challenging for my body and my health. So this mentor had said, for some large period of time, you need to be sure that you declare, that you make it clear nobody is to be in my energy field except for spirit, except for divine. And I see that as like the inflowing grace, the love of spirit. Maybe I would invite in Kuan Yin, Mother Mary, the essence of Yeshua or Jesus, unconditional love. I might invite in all the divine love of the universe to wash through my field. But the humans, um, perhaps even some animals, they're not in there. This is my territory. And so it can be good to make that practice in the morning to just clear your web, your field, because in Libra season, it can be very, very easy to get pulled off center, because so many people are off center, and there are so many forces right now that are um, really pulling us away from the connection to our own truth, to our own inner knowing. And so when I found as the title of this month, um, we can be brave. In my perspective, the first place to be brave is to maintain a connection to yourself, to your core essence. And so this is one good way to start with that. um, so here we have now this full moon in Aries. And so always, every month, we've got a new moon in one sign where the moon and the sun come together in that sign. And then about 2 weeks later, we've got the full moon in the opposite sign, right? So the full moon is up in this experience, Libra sun, Aries moon. And so it's a really beautiful dance because already when you're in the season, for example, of Libra, again, you can go into a bit of the extreme of that, but then the full moon comes in to balance it out because Aries is the energy that we can really tap into that can help us to balance that Libra, maybe overextension into other people's worlds or um, let's face it, social media and news and all of it, it can almost feel impossible to actually tease out and separate what do I think? What do I feel? What's my value system here? What's my intuition telling me about what's going on beyond all those voices out there that are saying, this is what it is, this is what it is, this is what's happening. Um, I feel like we do need our own discernment and what's my place in it, right? No one else can tell you that. Um, it's not until we uncover what our own role, what our own how to be at the center of our own web. What is our realm of influence? No one can really tell us that. We have to uncover that for ourselves. So the Aries full moon, Aries energy is all about autonomy, about sovereignty, about um, knowing the self. It's about that journey of exploring who you are in the world and being curious and saying, well, I really like this. I don't like this. Like, this feels great to me. This doesn't feel so good. So I remember years ago when I lived in New Mexico and I was working for an indigenous led organization and my friend and the man who I was working with, he was Lenape Apache, I believe. I'm trying to remember now. It's not a recognized tribe, but he was Chichimecan, he was like Mexican or Chicano, and he was also um, Apache. And it was an amazing moment where I was present with him because he worked with young Chicano and Native American men. Our organization, I was working with him and was offering wraparound like support for these families in the community who were really had experienced intergenerational trauma and poverty. And so this young man wanted to go into the military. And because this friend, Albino, because he had also been pulled into the military at a very young age and he had experienced very negative repercussions from that. He was speaking to this young man to try to help him to make a decision that would really honor him and to not be pressured into something that wasn't right. And so the story he told always stuck with me. I share it now because I have often said I feel this is the essence, the true essence of Aries. He said, okay, in a healthy culture and in a healthy person, a person who's really in balance. He was always told that that kind of person has a little grandmother and a little grandfather that live inside of that person's heart. And part of the way that these ancestors lived inside this person is that when they had to make a decision, the little grandmother and grandfather were the part of them that would just say a strong, clear yes or no. So there was a part of them that was wise, that was tapped into, had a taproot down into some really grounded, rooted wisdom, and that this part of them could give them a clarity around yes or no. Um, so, I really loved that. And you could say that that's also from the ancestral realms of Pisces. The Pisces sign is the one that where you've gone through every other stage of the zodiac. You come to Pisces, and it really is the kind of loving elder wisdom that then can translate into clear, concise, directed, focused action. So so we could ask, what does it mean to become brave? What does it mean to act in a brave way, to have courage, to come from the heart? Of course, courage has to do with the heart. Courage. Um, and we're all being called to step into our courage now. And so the Aries full moon is asking us to really ask, what is my yes? What is my no? And again, this is why the clearing is important. So you can distinguish between what really comes from inside of your ecosystem and what is kind of coming in that might be out of balance or harmony with who you really are. So that's number one. And then Aries also is an astrological sign that is connected to the desire to be a guardian, to protect what is sacred. So the Aries part of us is very clear about our priorities. What do I value? What matters to me? So where Libra is the diplomat, the peacemaker, and is always going to be really doing this beautiful job of asking and trying to understand everyone's perspective. Once the Libra part of us has even maybe internally our internal counsel with our internal parts, or, in our community, our family of origin, or wherever we are engaging with other, the Libra part is after you do a good job of listening to everyone's perspective, then we need Aries to come in and say, okay, I've heard everybody's perspective, and now I am going to, based on that, I'm going to make a decision. This is what I'm going to do, or this is what we're going to do based on that. And so we need that Aries decisiveness to balance what for Libra can kind of feel pretty wobbly at times. So this full moon is an invitation to balance the places where we might be fawning or people pleasing or kind of losing ourselves. It redirects to full, clear focus, bold. I know who I am. I know my yes or no, and I'm going to be directed in that way. And so, just to really encourage you, not just, on this full moon, but over the course of this coming month, to practice seeing yourself as the kind of person who knows how to be directed, who knows how to be clear, who knows how to come into contact with your clear yes, your clear no. And I think when we start to tell the story that this is something that is innate to us, which it is, and then we become better at that. So, okay, so it's a super Aries full moon. And the other thing about this full moon that I wanted to bring up, so here it is 14 Aries, 14 Libra. What's interesting about it is that it's happening almost exactly when Chiron and Eris, I believe they're exactly conjunct um, at about 25:16 Aries, in I think it's in 2 days, so the 8th of October. And this is the second of three conjunctions. One was in May, and I believe the next one is in January or February of 2026. So, Eris is a very slow moving planetary body, and, Chiron moves faster. So, Chiron is going to meet Eris about every 50 years. It's a little different than that, but it's close to 50 because that's how long it takes for Chiron to move through a sign. So, this is an event that does not happen frequently. And just to kind of break it down to understand what this is, Eris is an asteroid that has been in the sign of Aries since the early 1900s, I believe. And she kind of holds that frequency of the fierce feminine, of the goddess who is a warrior, who is a guardian and a protector. So when we talk about Aries, I mean, she's in the sign of Aries, which is her home ground. And so um, she has to do with the part of us that is very opinionated, that has very strong view, a perspective on what is right, what's wrong, um, and really has actually authentically a deep care um, for justice. And so, we know her through the Greek myths as the goddess of discord because she was also the goddess who was not invited to the party in ancient in the Greek myths, where she wasn't invited to this party, and because of that, she ended up in her rancor, she ended up um, causing the Trojan War. That's the way the story goes. So that's the story we know. But of course, we also know that in many of these accounts, there is a deeper story and there's a deeper root. So Eris really, she is the sister of Ares, the god of war. So she could be seen as the goddess of war. Um, but like with Aries, Eris has been her message and her story has been distorted. And we know that in the original understandings of Mars or of Ares, who are the same deity, in essence, that they were originally holding the frequency again of sacred protector, protecting what is sacred, protecting what is precious. And so she would have been the feminine expression of that. She protects and guards what is absolutely sacred and precious. And of course, a sacred guardian in a time or in a culture or in a context where there is extraction and distortion and inversion of the sacred is going to be seen as a disruptor. So this is what we really are coming into contact with Eris, is that she is the part of each of us who has always been a troublemaker. She's the part of each of us who just never could quite stay silent when we find ourselves in a context where we see people being bullied or where we see injustice. We simply just can't stay silent. And I've been really looking at that part of myself as well. And, I had a recent experience with this where um, I was at a very large gathering. I had traveled for this pilgrimage and was with a group of amazing humans. And there was a moment in that circle where, as is true for many spiritual communities, there was a large focus on um, coherence, on prayer, on coming together as one heart. And I still feel, and I felt at that time, really moved by that frequency of love and of harmony and all of it. It's just like a remembrance. This is what it feels like. But there was a moment in this event where there was a ripple that moved through that group, and the puncture or the ripple was caused by someone who had mentioned in the larger group context what was happening in Palestine. And it ignited a flame. This flame moved across the room. It ignited me. It ignited a Palestinian woman across the room. And so there was the three of us and perhaps one other person in the back who all felt ignited by this energy of grief and sorrow and rage. And it moved through our bodies. And it was a disruption to this peaceful, calm, beautiful energy. And it was clear in that context that two things were clear. One, in the moment, what was clear is that the power of the energy behind this flame was so great that it could eclipse and it could take over the entire community field. And and that was something that there were enough people in the circle who were very skillful at navigating the energy that they could honor it, but not grow it. Right. So that was very important. There was also a slight thread of knowing that it was vital and important for that energy to be spoken into and to be included in the field. Now, the way I've always learned this is that from the beginning of my training as a shamanic astrologer, I was always told that when we hold circle, when we gather in ceremony, we always invite Eris. We invite the one who hasn't been invited. Another way to say that is that when I was, again, working in this Albuquerque-based organization, this Indigenous-led organization, that we had a farm that our youth were working on. It was this kind of ancestral, beautiful farm that was bringing in lots of beautiful cultural practices. And but one of those was that I was taught that in some of these traditional Mexican and Chicano traditions, that you would when you blessed the fields, because there's a day San Isidro festival is when you bless the fields, bless the seeds at the beginning of the growing season, that when you bless the seeds, you had to make an offering to the thief. You had to make an offering to the thief because you were going to have the raccoons and you might have we had homeless people who would come in and they'd take our watermelons, right? But you had to make that offering because part of that was supposed to go to the ones who you would see as being exiles, or you'd want to keep them out. You want to put up that fence, but you got to make some offerings to the ones who have been disenfranchised or have been seen in a negative light, or who perhaps aren't quite as comfortable for us. And so you always have to make an offering to Eris. And so I always enjoyed that and appreciated that, because I think the understanding is that if you don't, then she will come and she will cause problems. So, this is also relevant, of course, in terms of internal family systems work, um, and the kinds of parts work that a lot of people are doing now is they even refer to exiles, like some parts that we have inside of us that were really shut down at certain points in our lives cause a lot of problems because we haven't been willing to include them in the larger family within ourselves. So that skill of being able to include the exile without that part of you that may have built up a lot of hostility and rage, without that part of you taking over the entire system, it's a real danger. It truly is. And so that's why skill and care and mindfulness is needed in these kinds of procedures. And so we are in a procedure as a human species where we are required to change and to be brave in new ways. And so part of that is, I absolutely feel that the personal is political on this level, and that, to an equal proportion that we see all the divisions, um, we see everything that's happening out there. And of course, it is impacting us, some more than others, marginalized groups. We can see out there, and I absolutely feel we do need to be those sacred guardians and protectors of the ones who are most vulnerable to harm, including our trans community, including our queer community, including people of color, including women broadly, and including, perhaps most especially at this moment, immigrants within our community. Um, so yes, it is for us to enact and to come into the empowered Eris that understands how to be a guardian and a protector. And if we only see it all externally, and if we are really only operating from the place of good guy, bad guy, if we're only externalizing, the danger is very real that we are going to continue to spiral these cycles of violence. And so we must learn internally to ask, who is for example, who are the ICE agents inside of me? What are the parts of me that are so terrified of insurrection, so terrified of those hostile, rageful parts that have been left behind, that have been neglected, that have been harmed. So who are the parts of me that are trying to control, suppress, and what are the parts of me that are perhaps actually causing a tremendous amount of harm because they haven't been properly honored. They haven't been given a proper place in the larger family, right? So um, all this is happening inside of us, outside of us right now. This is very much an Aries and an Eris conversation. So we've got Eris, then we've got Chiron. And this year, there are two places where I've seen this theme of kind of softening. It keeps coming up. How can I soften? How can I soften so I can be more present to what's actually happening all around me and inside of me? How is it that the softening can create a space for something to resolve? How is it the softening and making a field that is more neutral and more open and more curious? How is it that in that space that I create, something new and magical can occur and something can be resolved, perhaps, that's been knotted up and has felt unresolvable forever? So, what could that be? So Chiron is the sacred healer. Chiron is the wounded healer. And Chiron, right there with Eris, traveling with Eris all year long, has been helping us to have our hearts be broken open again and again to the places where we can see clearly what kind of hurt and harm is caused when we, on the one hand, um, what harm is being caused to those in our society who are exiled. And again, and it's also just individuals who, increasing numbers of individuals who are falling through the cracks financially, elders who are on a fixed income. In the US, and in many countries, it's many people who are our societies are not caring for them, right? And of course it's aspects of the earth as well. So the Chiron is helping break open our hearts so that we are seeing, perceiving the medicine in the wound so that we are beginning to see and feel the healing qualities of the part of us that's exiled. We're starting to see the gold. We're starting to see part of the way I experience this is that I sometimes go through phases where my inner rebel, the part of me that's always like feels like I'm the devil's advocate or just can't kumbaya correctly in my spiritual circles. I have to be able to love that part of me because she wouldn't be disrupting if she didn't care. There's something that she needs to be able to come in as a healthy guardian, right? So medicine is needed, and Chiron has been part of what's supporting with that. So that's a big part of the full moon. Okay, so I want to move beyond the full moon. I've already been speaking into this a little longer than I planned, but it's a powerful one. Uh, and so I want to speak into some of the big themes that are also happening over the course of the month. And let me just kind of I want to call in because there's so much. Um, not the eclipse season, but it's still this month is also promises to be very dynamic. We have some of the bigger events are that we have Indigenous Peoples Day on October 12th, and I'm sorry, yeah, sorry, Sunday, October 12th. And then we have some of the bigger actions are on the 13th, Pluto stations direct, which means that really even already and until the latter part of October, we're going to be really feeling Pluto. Because when you got a planet that moves so slowly, stationing, direct or retrograde, they're at their closest to the Earth, and it's like a big ship kind of steering, right? So you're really feeling the energies pulsing of Pluto. Of course, at the same time, we have the sun moving into Scorpio. Um, and we are, we also have not only Saturn now at 29 or close to 29 Pisces, but we also are going to have Neptune moving back into Pisces on October 22nd to that anaretic degree, that final degree of Pisces, 29. So I've been feeling this for so long, like that this fall with Saturn and Pisces moving back into the late degrees of Pisces, that it's once again kind of movement into this realm of doing the grief work, the shadow work, allowing ourselves to surrender to a much deeper shedding and clearing and releasing of layers of ancestral wounding. So we're doing a lot of healing and a lot of releasing through this phase. Not only that, but of course, at least in the northern hemisphere, we are also moving into winter. But in both hemispheres, we're going to be moving into the sign of Scorpio and Samhain at the end of the month. And so that is also kind of a deathing portal. So add to that Pluto. So yes, we're even though it's not the eclipse season, we're still actually, hopefully and ideally, we're still really tuned into the feeling centers. And so that we can allow these deeper movements, these waves of clearing, releasing, shedding, um, and, so that we can come through this portal. And when we come into February of this coming year, that we and Saturn and Neptune are together at zero Aries, that we're more clean and clear. We're able to take action. We're able to move forward in creating the world we want to create together. So yeah, so there are some layers of that feeling of releasing and letting go. Um, we also have some of the other bigger movements. That's really one of the biggest ones um, is Neptune moving back into Pisces. But then we also have the Sun square Pluto. So and Jupiter square Chiron right around October 23rd, 24th. So so there's a lot of this letting go, shedding. Oh, and also Venus, if you've watched her in the morning sky, she's been in a period since March 29th of this year. She's been morning star Venus. And when Venus is morning star, she is in a process of releasing, clearing distortions. And she's, as she's going closer to the horizon from our view, and as she's really getting closer and closer to moving behind the sun, she's preparing to enter the underworld. And so she is preparing for that in November, as is Mars. So Venus and Mars are both going to enter the underworld, meaning that they're going to be in the beams of the sun and we can't see them. And they're going to be journeying together into the underworld very soon. So all of that is to say that there is an energetic right now where it really serves us to go deep. I really loved, I heard Marianne Williamson recently say, really recommend that at this time, it's a really good time to just go deeper. And I have been feeling that as well. It's like slow down your pace in your relationships and your conversations and what you're up to. Just slow down enough to bring in more depth, to bring in more presence. And that really, I feel, is the gift of the Scorpio wisdom, the gift of Samhain, and the gift of the season. It also is the gift of Chiron, it's the gift of Pluto. We get to drop into these bodies and really just drop in as we do in the winter season as we're preparing for that. It can be a delicious experience, not just comfortable, but there are aspects of it that are um, deeply nourishing to root down deep into this experience of feeling and being in a body and all of that. So, um, yeah, so this month, we really are, again, there's kind of, so being brave involves with this Aries full moon, really reconnecting to the self. And also, it's not just with Aries and with Aries, it's not also only about the inner journey, it's also about um, really seeing around us and planting seeds and taking actions towards what we really care about. And again, this is a big soul searching time over these coming months of who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I stand up for what I care about? And so when I keep reinforcing that we need to come home to ourselves and all of that, it's not because I don't feel we need to be accomplishing things in our relationships and out in the world. It's that I know that if we want to be effective, that we want to be sourced. Um, we want to be deeply sourced in the work we do. So um, I'll just mention I really love that October 12th is Indigenous Peoples Day. It used to be called Columbus Day. This is another thing that we can appreciate about the moment we're in right now is that we are changing the way we see things. Not everyone, but we are acknowledging these things. So Indigenous Peoples Day, I want to just give a shout out for Lyla June Johnston. She is a Dene, Indigenous woman who does a lot of really inspiring work, among other things, on food forests and how it is that we can really practice being stewards and gardeners of the land in a way that is very exciting. So I really recommend her work in those realms. But she also is putting on this program that begins this coming Sunday, October 12th, Indigenous Peoples Day, that is supporting I think it's a 5-part series where she's sharing best practices and ways that those of us who are not native, indigenous to the lands where we live, ways that we can act as allies to communities, indigenous communities that are needing allyship. And as most of you who know me know, I really started an organization called Sisters North and South back in 2019. And from that time forward, I've had a practice of giving 20% of all the proceeds from my online courses to Indigenous female-led organizations. And so this is something that matters a great deal to me. And it is something that I do intend as time moves forward to activate more fully even. But at this time, I feel like the most beneficial thing I can do is to promote what Lyla June is offering here because she really is such a wonderful bridge and can really help us to see what does it mean to support Indigenous communities. And what I love about that is I've worked with Indigenous communities since I was 19, and I first helped to bring a group, an alternative spring break trip of all things, to Big Mountain, Arizona, which is not too far from where I am now. It's it was a place where there was a land dispute between the Hopi and the Navajo tribes that basically was really it was stirred up by powers that wanted the coal that was underneath this land, right? That where the Navajo were living, but technically was Hopi land. And if that sounds familiar, well, land disputes are often used, and it's often outside players that are really impacting the communities on the land. So in any case, there were traditional indigenous grandmothers and grandfathers who had lived on that land for 100+ years and were sheep herders, and they were caring for the land. And so we got to go and learn from them and stay with the families and try to sheep herd. That was very difficult. Um, and the reason we went is because that land, there were many forces that were attempting to take the land from the traditional communities, and so that they could coal mine. And I'll tell you literally what was happening there was that there was a 276-mile water slurry where they were extracting water from the deepest, clear, clean, clear, sacred aquifers underneath that desert land. They were using that water to move the coal from these areas to Las Vegas and to these other power centers, Lake Powell, and to really fuel these desert regions. And so the Dene, the Navajo, and the Hopi elders also were wanting people to come and stay with the families, because otherwise these elders were getting kicked off. They were being harassed, they were being harmed, they were being persecuted, and so that the resources that were underneath the land could be extracted. And it's very interesting that often you will find that there are indigenous peoples, native people in the US, and indigenous peoples, earth-based peoples, the people close to the land who are caring for the land, who are farming the land, who know the land. Often they are the ones who are most at risk, most vulnerable. And they're also the ones who can potentially be the greatest guardians of these resources, these sacred resources. And, you saw that in Standing Rock. And we saw that at Black Mountain and Black Mesa, or sorry, Big Mountain, Black Mesa, where myself, I brought a number of groups of students over the years, and we practiced service learning. So there was a major curriculum for anybody who wanted to go on these trips to learn the history of the Dene, of the Hopi, of that land there, and the way that we were all learning about how these systems of extraction work. And it was a big learning, and it's definitely served when I was working in Palestine as well, because I saw the exact same mechanisms at work with two different communities of peoples pitted against each other so that the powers that be could extract the resources from within their feet and maintain power in that region. This is what we see happening again and again. So Indigenous peoples know about this, and they can help teach us, and they also can help us learn. They also, because I don't have the statistic right in front of me, but the world's biodiversity, an enormous amount of that, the major biodiversity of our planet is actually held on lands that are cared for by Indigenous people. So when we learn to become more effective allies for Indigenous groups and communities, then we are going to, I feel, be much more successful at guarding and protecting our Earth's most sacred resources and lands. And so I highly recommend this course with Lyla June, and you can look for more from me about Sisters North and South. I'm probably going to send a poll out to see what people are interested in. But for now, I think I want to start with really encouraging any of you. And I would actually also offer that anybody who signs up, whatever you pay to do it, because it's kind of pay what you will, I will double that off from a reading or a future online course. So just tell me about it, let me know, and I will double that and take that off of a reading or a course. So yeah, so just know that, and I hope to see you there. And I also do hope to bring Lyla June in at some stage to talk and to be part of a speaker series for Sisters North and South. Not right now because she's super busy, and she always is. But for now, I encourage everyone to to be a part of this, even if you just listen to the recording later, because she is, I have seen her for a while as our current day Martin Luther King for the Indigenous community. And what I mean by that is that she's so deeply rooted in love and compassion and being an active bridge. It doesn't mean that she minces words. It doesn't mean that she doesn't stand in some uncomfortable truths. But at the same time, I will say when I first she was part of my extended community when I lived in New Mexico, and she so I recall at some point when Standing Rock was first kind of erupting, that was really when I had begun with Kaylin Castell to gather the Venus Alchemy community. And it was, you know, upwards of 80 women, some men, some brave men who were in our community that would go through the Venus cycle. And we were a pretty close-knit circle of brilliant women and men. But in any case, I remember learning about Standing Rock through Lyla June, because at the time, one of my friends and a wonderful, brilliant hairdresser was her one of her closer friends, and so I would always get everything from this friend. So in any case, I started to listen to these lives from Lyla June about what was happening in Standing Rock. So my filter was Lyla June, and she always would begin and end with prayer and with song, and she treated everything in a sacred manner. She would speak about everything with true respect, to such a degree that even I remember at one point when she would talk about Donald Trump, and she would refer to him as our uncle and as our family member. Now, that's a very difficult thing to do at this time. And I understand that anger and distress and concern are very natural, considering what we're going through right now, with many policies that many of us are not in line with, even though I would say he didn't start this whole issue. He is showing us very clearly what our shadow is. Um, However, I would say that perspective of seeing him as a human being and honoring his humanity, as controversial as that might be in some of my circles, and I know in some of my circles, people are just tuned in at the spiritual level, not really so much 3D, and they're like, they would say, and I've had this part of me too, that says he's necessary, absolutely necessary, because what because we need our current status quo to shift and alter radically. And that's what he's accomplishing. Um, so a part of me spiritually sees and feels it that way. And another part of me absolutely, um, like many of you, is devastated by what's happening on the ground. In any case, Lyla June has always been able to be that kind of bridge who could somehow speak very honestly and fearlessly about um, Indigenous issues and about what it is that we're being called to in this moment of peril for our earth. And at the same time, she's able to carry it all with tremendous love and wisdom and humanity. So I just speak to all of that because I really want to encourage, again, people, if you are able to attend her course, and want to just say that all of that in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, and also as a part of that healthy Aries and Eris, where we do stand up, we do be brave, and we do, and I think there may be nothing more potent than we can do right now, than to listen to Indigenous voices and uphold and uplift Indigenous communities in such a way that we can support them in continuing to, and we can join them and stand with them in caring for our lands and waters. Because at the end of the day, we get so confused about all the details out there, but we are here to be gardeners of the earth. We are here to care for our bodies and Mother Earth. And and I don't believe that only people who are in Indigenous bodies in this lifetime, meaning that they come from a lineage on the lands where they live, that where their culture emerges from that place. I don't believe that it's only those people who carry this innate earth-based wisdom. absolutely believe it lives inside of all of us. We all have ancestors who carry that innate knowledge, and it is true for who we are. It's just who we are. And at the same time, I do feel that there is something very important about standing with and alongside our Indigenous brothers and sisters to support them in caring for our lands and helping our minds to be open with their language, with their words, with their cultural lifeways. Um, our minds are needing that kind of richness to remember parts of who we are. So I'm going to end that there. And there's a lot more going on this month, but that's feels most essential. And I hope you have a beautiful full moon in Aries and a wonderful October. And I will catch you next time.